guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be my August TBR. Honestly, I have no idea what I want to read this month. There are a few very exciting releases that are at the top of my TBR, but when I was looking at my shelves, I was kind of stumped. So my strategy this month was just to pull off the books that I feel like have been at the top of my TBR for months, hopefully try to figure out exactly what it is I feel like reading. Nonetheless, I'm really looking forward to all the titles I have picked up. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The very first book that is on my TBR is by far and away one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and I know many of you guys are just as excited as I am about this release, and that of course is R.F. Kuang's new book coming out August 23rd. And the book I'm of course talking about is Babel, or The Necessity of Violence, an Arcane History of the Oxford Translator's Revolution. This is R.F. Kuang's new book. I absolutely adore the Poppy War series. It's one of my all-time favorite fantasy series, from the gray morality to the writing to the combat. It swept me away immediately. I loved it. So needless to say, her new release is a book I need to get to right away. The concept of this one just sounds incredible. This book opens up in 1828 and follows our main character Robin, who is an orphan and is basically discovered by this very mysterious professor. He's brought to London and then begins his years of training in Latin, ancient Greek, and Chinese, all in preparation for his indoctrination or his admittance into this very prestigious translator secret society at Oxford. Babel is essentially the world's center of translation, and this particular skill set also helps Great Britain not only achieve great wealth, but also helps the empire achieve their efforts in colonization. Follow our main character Robin, who is a Chinese boy raised in Britain. He's struggling with the reality of serving Babel, this really powerful organization, inevitably helping them destroy his own motherland. And so begins the steps as we follow our main character Robin throw this organization in revolution. It is said to be a thematic response to The Secret History and a tonal response to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. This book just sounds incredible, and I truly cannot wait to dive in. From there, I also have quite a few fantasy reads I want to get to this month, as you would expect. The first is The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison. This was a recent pickup for me, and honestly, ever since I've added it to my shelf, it's really been calling out to me. It seems like a very character-led fantasy story, which in general are books I personally really enjoy, but this is said to be a vividly imagined fantasy of deadly court intrigue, and for the most part I think it acts as a standalone. There are other books in this world, but they follow side characters and kind of side stories, so I think in and itself this book is very contained. This follows our main character Maya, who is the youngest son of a marriage that was forged to create a treaty. Raised in exile, far from his father and also far from the imperial court. He knows little of the rituals of empire, and he knows even less of the inner workings of the politics that surround the court itself. But when his father and 3 half-brothers die suddenly, Maya is called back to the imperial court and is crowned king. From there, Maya's life is turned upside down, and he is now in the center of a new bewildering existence, and he also fears that the deaths of his father and brothers was no accident. And honestly, what has made me so excited to read this book, outside of the synopsis, is this particular line: a remarkable, hopeful story of a single decent person doing his best in a difficult situation. Remarkably compelling and fascinating. Apparently, our main character Maya is very lovable. You're rooting for him from page 1, and obviously he's kind of put in an incredibly difficult situation full of court politics and intrigue. I also in general really love that setup as well. I really feel like I'm going to love this, and I'm hoping to be very emotionally invested, which is why I added it to my TBR for the month. Next book that's on my TBR is Locklands by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the third and final book to the Foundry Side series, one of my favorite fantasy trilogies, and I'm really excited to see how it's all going to wrap up. This world not only has a fantastic cast of characters you will love, a heist sort of plot line that keeps you flipping the pages, but also one of the most unique magic systems that I simply have ever come across. I always describe it as magical coding. Essentially, if you know the language of a material, you can rewrite it and also therefore transform the material itself. The beginning of this book, we follow our main character Sansia, who is a very excellent thief. She's hired to steal an impossible artifact from a very powerful merchant group. She does, because she's very good at her job. But this results in her being in the center of merchant politics, and also now possessing an incredibly powerful artifact, kind of throwing her life and her world upside down. Also results in her kind of becoming a part of this crew of underdogs trying to overthrow the established powers as well. It's so good, so engaging. The first 2 books were great, and I really cannot wait to see where we are taken with the last book. From there, I also want to pick up The City of Dragons by Robin Hobb. This is book 3 to the Rain Wild Chronicles, a series I am determined to finish before the end of the year. I honestly have been loving the Rain Wild Chronicles. Do you feel like it's a little underrated relative to other Robin Hobb series, which I get, because I wouldn't say this is my favorite of the series, but it's still so good, and I love that we're back in a multi-POV world. I love that we're following, again, a group of outcasts, and Robin Hobb's writing is excellent. Characterization is excellent, her character arcs impeccable, and just to learn more about the Elderlings and the Rain Wild area has been absolutely fascinating, and I love our main character that is present in this as well. I feel like it's a great discovery novel, but everything is also wrapped up in a journey, a quest, and beautiful characters as well. So I'm really looking forward to picking up the third one, especially based off the ending of book 2. I love Robin Hobb. I'm really sad that I'm kind of coming to the finish line with her books, but I'm not really thinking about that quite yet, but I do plan to get to this as well. Next is a book you have seen a few times in TBR videos, and that is The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. I have not been prioritizing this book at all, but I finally did at the end of last month, and I was able to read to about page 300, which is about 50% of the way through. I'm loving this book. This is book 2 to John Gwynne's like Viking inspired fantasy series. It's brutal, it's dark, it's multi-POV, and you're following a great cast of characters. Book 2, I already am enjoying more than book 1. I feel like the action and the plotting is just continuing to accelerate, but because John Gwynne really took the time to establish a fantastic baseline with his characters, you just can't put this book down, and I am loving it so far. But if you're not familiar, the first book in this series is The Shadow of the Gods, which is set in, again, a Viking-inspired world. We're following a variety of characters kind of going on their own quests, either for vengeance, for glory, or to save their son. And this world itself was once ruled by the gods, but humanity kind of rose up and killed them off. But the tokens left by them can still be harnessed for power, and combat itself is really significant within this world. In fact, there are warrior bands that kind of go out fighting monsters and seeking their own glory. At the beginning of book 1, there's also the beginning of a political shift. Some individuals trying to centralize power and kind of forcing different communities to fall under one single jurisdiction, which is creating some tension. The entire plot really expands quite a bit from that initial setup and begins to really explode going into book 2, which has made this particular installment so enjoyable, and I can't put it down. I am going to finish this book this month. I'm already halfway through, and it's kind of one of my early month reads anyway, but yes, it's so good. I can't wait. Next, I have some newer releases that I just really want to pick up. The first is Nettle and Bone by T. Kinfisher. This is a rather short book, but based on the synopsis, I do really feel like it could be a new favorite of mine. It seems lyrical and dark. I love a fairy tale reimagining. And this follows our main character, Mara. And Mara never wanted to be a hero, but she is tired of sitting on the sidelines watching her sister suffer. Her sister, who was forced to marry a prince who is mistreating her, Mara has decided to save her. And to go on this quest, she must essentially complete 3 impossible tasks. The first is build a dog of bones, the next sew a cloak of nettles, and lastly, capture moonlight in a jar. As is the way in tales of princes and witches, doing the impossible is only the beginning, hero or not. And now Mara is joined by an ex-knight and a disgraced fairy godmother as she goes about trying to complete these quests. Again, I love the setup of this book. I feel like it's going to be a dark reimagining of like a classic fantasy quest with very clear fairy tale connections as well. I've heard excellent things about this. I really feel like this is going to be for me, and I can't wait to check it out. From there, I also want to pick up Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. This is Emily St. John Mandel's 3rd book. I've read her first 2 and have really, really enjoyed them. Fun thing about this author's stories is they all kind of exist within the same universe and world, and there are connections and Easter eggs to previous stories, which makes reading her books just really enjoyable, especially because I am just such a big fan of her work and her writing style. Emily St. John Mandel is also kind of known for having all of these disparate characters that seemingly have nothing to do with each other, and you slowly watch how they inevitably are connected. And this book also seems to span quite a significant amount of time, starting first in 1912 on Vancouver Island, spanning 500 years in the future to a colony on the moon. I personally don't want to read too much into the synopsis for my own experience. I really like going to her books blind, but I'm sure there's going to be a variety of characters that I fall in love with, and I'm excited to see where the journey of this book takes me. Next book on my list is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. I am thrilled to read this. I've heard such good things. So many of you guys have gotten me so hyped about this, and there's just something so fun about starting the first book to a new series. It just feels like there's so much possibility, so much adventure, so much to be discovered. And this follows our main character, Lowly, and she is known as the Midnight Merchant, and with the help from her Jinn bodyguard, she essentially hunts and sells illegal magic. At the beginning of this book, she basically goes against her general code and decides to save and protect this cowardly prince. Unfortunately, though, she immediately regrets it because she gets pulled into a conspiracy by the Emperor himself, who then blackmails her into finding an ancient lamp which would grant him immense power at the expense of destroying all the Jinn in the land. No choice but to obey or be executed, we follow Lowly as she begins this journey. She's also joined by one of the Sultan's older sons, who's part of the very infamous 40 Thieves, to survive monster attacks, take on ancient magic, and of course, a mysterious figure from Lowly's past begins to make an appearance. This is a book that seems to be full of adventure and magic and friendship, and I'm also hoping romance. It has amazing early reviews, so I can't wait to check it out for myself. Next up, I have another literary fiction option, and that is Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. I've honestly been wanting to read this book for years, and with the release of her newer novel that I think is recommended to read this book first, I finally feel like inspired to finally get this book off my TBR. From the formatting to the writing style, I hear this book is incredibly unusual, so much so that there's actually like a PowerPoint at some point in this book, which honestly sounds rather intriguing. The first character we follow is Benny, who is an aging former punk rocker and is now a record executive. Next, we follow Sasha, who is a passionate but troubled young woman that he employs. Here, Jennifer Egan brilliantly reveals their pasts along with their inner lives of a host of other characters whose pasts intersect with theirs. With music pulsing on every page, A Visit from the Goon Squad is startling and exhilarating. It sounds amazing. I've had some like real life friends also recently pick this book up and really enjoy it. I want to chat with them about it, and it's not very long, and I love that this is kind of like corporate America, but also includes music. I'm very intrigued. Then the last book on my TBR is a book I have put off for way too long, and I need to get back into this series. And that is Albions Gate by James S.A. Corey, book 3 to the Expanse series. I read the first 2 books in the Expanse series pretty back to back, but now of course there's been a lengthy gap between me finishing book 2 and picking up book 3, which is a bad habit I have. But I want to get back on this series because I honestly was really enjoying it. It's like a very intense plot-forward space opera tale. I also really want to check out the television show, which has excellent reviews, but in my heart of hearts, I feel like I need to finish the book series before I could possibly start a new television series. But the Expanse series is a really explosive, multi-POV like space opera tale, and the cast of characters we follow continuously is expanding book over book, which does make sense as the plot continues to balloon as well. I honestly can say that I really never have any idea where this book series is going, and it's constantly doubling down and upping the ante on how chaotic and life-altering the plot seemingly can bring itself to. In book 1, we follow our main character, Jim Holden, who is a ship captain, and him and his crew basically come across an abandoned ship, and on the ship they find an artifact that people have killed for in the past and will continue to do so in the future. In the sci-fi world, there are first Earth and Mars, who are 2 very powerful old planets with their own governments, political interests, and there's also an area called the Belt. It's a collection of space stations which has been historically taken advantage of by these 2 more powerful planets. At the beginning of book 1, it is a tinderbox. Everyone hates each other, and they're really just looking for a spark for conflict. Enter the spark, Jim Holden finding this particular artifact. But again, that is really just the start of the series. It is so explosive, it's constantly evolving. It honestly makes it impossible to put down. I really liked the expansion we saw both politically and from the characters that were included in book 2, so I'm looking forward to seeing where the story is going to take us, because I can honestly say I have no idea. Alrighty guys, those are all the books I hope to pick up in the month of August. Let me know down below some books you hope to get to soon, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!